So, so the most important thing you gotta remember is, okay, some people were, they were doing some stuff, and then other people were like, hey, don't do that stuff, and then other people were like, hey, yeah, they should do, that stuff. It's good that they're doing that stuff, and then the other people were like, I don't think they should be doing that stuff, and then and then and then thing, and then the thing, and then thing, the one, the do so things are like, so, uh, what I'm trying to say is that, in conclusion, well, hello, everybody. Good morning. This glorious Saturday morning. I'm coming to you live from my office slash front room, living room here in Connecticut. And today's a special episode of the Rodney Norman Show. Um, as you know, I'm on a quest to have a conversation with nearly every human being on the face of the planet, and joining me today, very special guest, someone who I've known his entire life. And he's been involved in mine. My brother, Michael. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my brother, Michael Norman.
Well, hello, Rodney.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. You?
Good, good. Where are you at?
I am in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Salt Lake City, Utah. Now we both grew up in Utah, obviously. You were with us in Nevada, weren't you? You were.
Yes, I was in Nevada.
You
I
remember
was
those.
not quite old enough for school, I think, when we moved back.
All right,
So
cool.
I
So
remember the rolling of the
that's
car.
right. You were in the car when it rolled.
Yeah, I was in the hatch that was in the back, and I remember being stuck in there, hearing people yelling, "They're all dead! They're all dead!"
Yeah, we came running back to you. Okay, so just those of you watching, here's what happened. Our family lived in Nevada for a year, and out of nowhere, basically in the middle of the night, mom and dad decided we're moving back to Utah, and so we loaded everything up and we took off in the middle of the winter. I mean, it was snowing. I mean, it was the most ridiculous point in time you could ever move. And we never understood when we were kids why we were moving. But we learned later on the reason is because my dad was confronted and was invited to join, basically become part of the mafia. And it was one of those deals where yeah, he didn't want to get involved, and so he felt the best thing for us to do was just leave. And we did so in the middle of the night, basically. So we pick up and we start heading to Utah. And as we're going across, now myself and the other two brothers, Stephen and Tracy, and my dad were in a U-Haul. Um, and we were in front, and we were driving across the basically the salt flats, right? That's where it happened, right?
Yeah.
And as we're going, my mother and Michael, uh, Kathy, and Christine. Christine was with us, wasn't she?
Yes, she was still at this time.
Yeah. And Amos. We had Amos. I told people about Amos, the ugly dog.
Yeah, can't forget about Amos.
So you guys were in the Oldsmobile station wagon,
Yeah.
and it rolled. It just hit some snow, and mom lost control, and the car rolled. So my Steven, he was watching in the rearview mirror. He saw the car actually roll over, and so he starts, screaming, "Dad, Dad! Car! They rolled over! They rolled over!" So we heard and stopped, and we just all got out and started running back. And as we get to the scene, other people had stopped to help, and there was this one guy who he was drunk, and he was just there yelling at everybody, going, "They're all dead. Stay away from them. Stay away from them. You're all going to get your asses sued. Stay." They're all dead. I mean, it was just, as we're running up and we're hearing this guy yelling, they're all dead. Um, but by the time we got there, though, Amos was out running around, and eventually everybody got out, and nobody was hurt seriously.
I don't remember even having any bruises.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it was. I think it was just the rollover was just, and it was the snow was just perfect that it just. I mean, Dad drove the car afterwards, and they got it pulled over. He drove it back.
yeah, no, I was surprised, but yeah, it was, it wasn't straight by any means, but
But
you know,
yeah, he was still able to drive it back to Utah instead of towing it. But that
I
was
was stuck up in that third section with the rear facing seat, the one when the
yeah,
whole family got together. We were watching the world go the other direction on us. So
oh yeah, the front seat where you could stare at the driver in the car behind you
yeah,
and
and
wave at him. We used
stare
to always
directly at them.
Yeah, well, we used to always make notes. We'd put up notes, and we would talk to people in other cars. That was that's in case you were wondering what people did in cars back then, what kids did. You had this seat in the back, so you were facing the other vehicle, the other drivers. And so we would write signs saying, "Hey, we're headed to Utah," or what station, what radio station are you listening to? And then you would both be listening to the same station, and you start singing the songs together. That was a fun one.
Yeah,
So,
I always tell people, because when I've told my kids, about that story, Madison, my youngest daughter, always pops up and says, "Well, weren't you wearing your seatbelt?" I said, "No, nobody wears seatbelts. Those are tucked underneath the seat full of Coke and everything else. It's
oh yeah,
been
I
spilled."
mean, I don't remember as a kid ever putting on a seatbelt. I don't think I put on a seatbelt until I started driving when I was 16. Well, okay, started driving when I was 14, but I didn't ever put a seatbelt on until I was 16.
Yeah, no, I don't. You
But
didn't want
I
to,
I
did
didn't
you?
even know where they were. I mean, I
What?
we just, they were just you just didn't ever wear a seatbelt. They were
I remember finding them, and they were tucked underneath the seat. And of course, you had to pry them off the floorboard because they were stuck to it. And
yeah.
think, "Oh, I'm going to wear this," and then you realize it doesn't bend anymore. I think, maybe that's a bad idea. So
Yeah. They were fun. So anyway, so what do you do? What do you do? You just started a new okay, you did you raced. Okay, so I've told you guys before we're into car racing, our whole family. Well, Michael's continued. He still races cars. And you used to do the figure eight racing, and you had the coolest figure eight race car of all time.
well, it was a train car, so it was
Train
three
car.
cars. Yes, my engine car was a '69 Pontiac ambulance. So back in the old days, like a Ghostbuster, best way to describe it, looking car was my engine car, and I had a Dodge Omni as a middle car, and then I had a Mustang um, 85, I think it was Mustang 84,
Uh-huh.
and it was painted up like the ambulance was painted up with the ambulance with emergency 911 was the number, and the back car was painted up as if it was a police car, and then the middle car we kind of made look like a lifelike because it just needed something, and we'd race that in the figure eight, and I did that for 2.5 years and only had one collision in the intersection. So
Now the trick though was the back car was the brakes.
yeah, he only had brakes and steering. We was nice enough to leave the motor in there just for extra weight, but it was full of sand and whatever else heavy we could stick inside it. But and then
Okay.
I had the motor and the for the gas, and steering, and I would be the one that would decide whether we were going someplace, whether he wanted to or not, because it had more power than his brakes ever wanted. So,
Oh, okay.
and
Now,
he would just get,
you had brakes too, though, right?
well, I could connect them to move them around through the pit area. But once we went on to the racetrack, I'd pull a pin and the brake pedal would just flop. So they were no longer working in my car.
Oh,
So,
wow. And you only had one. You only had one crash the entire time.
well, no, I didn't say one crash. I'm just saying one intersection crash.
Oh, okay.
So I got crashed a lot. We actually had another team built a second car to come drive me into walls and things weekly. So
Oh,
they
really?
realized they couldn't beat us racing us, so they decided to beat us by
Oh,
shoving us into walls.
taking you out.
Yeah. So after a couple of years of that, and I made really good money. It cost me about $50 a weekend, and I was clearing somewhere up around $400 racing. So it's the only class I've ever made money racing. The rest of them, you're pretty much, you know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was always the thing, is that it always costs more than you ever won.
And then after that, I gave up, the train part, and then I actually went and drove brakes for a good friend of ours, Skip Delaney, and we won a few times in that one. And then his nephew Tracy and I drove a backup car for him for a few years.
No, this was at Rocky Mountain Raceway, which is no
Yeah,
longer.
no
They've
longer.
torn it down. It's just buildings now, right? Or is it
Yeah,
still
just buildings.
just
They
buildings,
well,
just industrial complex?
and they built that in '96. They built a brand new racetrack to tearing down the trash that was there before, and it had great success. People showed up weekly, and they would tell us when the trains showed up, they knew they had a sold out. Um,
Oh, well, they were a spectacle. I
yeah,
mean, those things were.
people would come only to come watch the figure eight train race and leave afterwards. I've got videotapes of people's hair blowing sideways, trash blowing every which direction, and not a person left the grandstands until the checkered flag dropped, and then the room was clear. And it was we called a 10-lap race. The only flags that the flagman had was a green and a white and a checker, because it didn't matter what happened in the middle of that 10 laps. You raced in it, over it, and through it, whatever you could do to get through. So,
Oh, wow.
and then they decided after a while that maybe they needed to throw yellows and reds, so they started doing that. So a race that would take 10 minutes to run at most ended up taking over an hour and a half to 2 hours to run a race.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, because they'd stop it for everything. They'd stop it like it was a regular race and move things out of the way. And
Was that because of insurance?
that's because somebody got hit in the intersection. So we did come to the conclusion that maybe if somebody's stuck in the intersection, we ought to move them, make it easier to get through. But after that, it'd become every reason they throw. And by then, I was at it. I was already, moved on to figure eights,
Yeah.
and at one point, I was, doing comedy, the hypnosis on the weekend, so the racing thing kind of went
Yeah,
away.
that's right. Yeah, for the viewership, we had a comedy club in Orem, Utah, which it had been a comedy club before we took it over. And the people that made the comedy club um, didn't I they didn't fully comprehend what the comedy club business was. So when they built the place, there was no kitchen at all. There was no kitchen. And so you couldn't sell food. We had like a little snack bar. And when a comedy club, you make your money off the food and beverage. We had no way to make money off food and beverage. I mean, it was just chips and popcorn and soda pop. And it was really kind of ridiculous. But we started that we took over the club, and Michael was running it, and because you never knew what we had as far as an audience or what comedians are going to be there. By basically, you got you know became a comedian by default.
Well, I tried doing the comedy. I did the open mic stuff, and I was up on stage a few times. Not as any a feature, but more just kind of a guest spot or something like that. But so I did have some comedy background. But yeah, I got to host a lot of people. I got to do the MC work. Really quite enjoyed it. And then at one point, I decided that I could try being a hypnotist, and I successfully did that for a while and brought our crowds back up. And you know, I learned sitting on the toilet the morning of the show of reading through how to do an induction. So, and had 10 people sitting in my chairs at the end of it. I had 10 people still sitting in the chairs and doing pretty much whatever I decided at the moment they were going to do. So,
Yeah, that's the craziest thing about hypnosis is the first time you do a show and the people actually go under. It's like, wow, this works.
well, yeah, because at that point you know, I've got two hypnotists, one, really cocky young kid, and then an older guy that was there. Basically, they were showing up because they knew I was going to do it, and they wanted to see me completely fail, and it didn't happen. I had all 10 of them under, and did a show without music because I wanted to prove that you could do hypnosis without having to have all the bells and whistles and
Well,
fun
yeah, because
in the air.
yeah, because what okay, so what had happened is we had a hypnotist there one weekend, and we had a packed house. I mean, it was the biggest crowd we'd had in a long time. I mean, it was standing room only. It was
Yeah,
great. And this guy gets up there and he does his pre-talk, which was about 20 minutes, and it was boring. Then he did his hypnosis. He brought people up, did his induction, took like 15 minutes. He got two girls to go under. He did one skit, and then he said, "Okay, the show's over." And it was a disaster. I mean, it was just I couldn't believe it. Here we had the biggest crowd we had, and we had this horrible show. And so from then I thought, okay, that's it. As a comedian, if the show's bad and it's a comedian, I just go up there and do the show myself. You know, but for hypnosis, I didn't know what to do, so I went and trained under uh,
Vincent Lord.
Vincent Lords, and he trained me how to do hypnosis. And so I started doing shows. And the thing is we didn't have the luxury of a really good sound system, or well, a system for being able to play the music on demand. I mean, we had ways of doing it, but it just wasn't very reliable.
Well, no, it took me and somebody else over there trying to figure out what CD we're going to shove in the CD player to,
Yeah, and it was
and
just
then
so we just got good at just doing shows without music at all, which blew the other hypnotists' mind because they're like, "How do you what?" And we're like, "You don't need the music, you know." And so, as I'm doing the shows, you're looking at it going, "Well, I can do this," and
because
I knew you could do it
I
too.
wanted
So
to do it for years. I just thought it was going to be harder than what it was, and so
yeah, but you did a great job though.
yeah,
Put
and
on good shows.
one of our hypnotists, and I really like the guy. He he's still a good friend of ours, and um, he made a deal because our thing is we hated watching him constantly being stuck into the chairs in between every skit when they change things up. They put him back in the chairs and put him back asleep and all dramatic effect. But after a while of watching them sitting in the chair mostly, we also decided that we wasn't going to use chairs and just float them to the floor, stick them to a wall, do whatever
Yeah,
entertain the crowd. I think sticking them to a wall, floating them to the floor is much bigger
yeah,
of a show
it was
than
more fun.
sticking in a chair.
Then we'd have them actually go sit with the audience and we got pretty creative with it.
I tell people it was more of a hypnosis improv show because I had no clue what I was going to do when I get up there because I didn't know how many people was going to be on stage, and so you can't do a skit, and people don't want to come see the same show every time. If you kind of bring in some things you've done in the past that worked well and it's kind of funny, but really they don't want to see the same show. They want to go out and see something different. They don't go to the same movie week after week just because of different actors playing in the movie. It doesn't happen. So and I got tired of watching it week after week. So I went and but the one deal I made with this hypnotist is he told me, well, you can't take the chairs off the stage. You've got to. And so I decided to take that as a personal challenge because that's me. And so instead of taking them off the stage, I decided to use them. I had 10 people, I had 4 chairs and call it a carnival ride. So they were my clowns. Every time I needed them to go to sleep, they all had to go get in those 4 chairs. She actually had people sitting on top of people in order to get into their clown car. And so it was fun. It was enjoyable. I went from having shows, which is pretty much family and friends and some
Oh yeah,
people that
we
just
get yeah, yeah.
happen to show up there. I did a free show for uh, the UBU housing complex that we were
Yeah, yeah.
in with a comedy show. Invited as many people as we could down to that. That brought in, another 50, 75 people, which I thought, well, they're getting in for free, but I get another chance of practicing this. Did another great show. And that next weekend, I was up to 250 people sitting in my audience that had paid to see a show. And I maintained that for a few weeks. And then the hypnotists were irritated that I was doing shows of large crowds because they're the ones that work to get them in there. I took a few weekends off to go do other things. And by the time I was able to come back, they had dropped their crowds back down to 35, 40.
Yeah,
So
it was a weird time. But we ended up having to close that place. It was just too it was too weird of a space. It was in an apartment complex. And now it's turned into, I think now it's like a call center for some telemarketing firm or
yeah,
something.
it was what others call scammer things. I don't know what's in it,
Yeah,
but
so those things are all over Utah.
that's one of the other things. And then, of course, we were talking about the racing thing, and I ended up buying a go-kart over the winter. It was going to be my daughter. She was going to race it, and things have come up, and I figured I fit in it. And they race this. They call it a fat cart or fart cart class up
Fart
in
cart,
Idaho Falls.
a fart cart.
A fart cart, yeah. And decided I was going to become a go-kart racer since that's one of the things I hadn't done yet. And I run that, and I painted it up. There's because Dad and Paul Walters had a car together that was built in 1972. It had the paint scheme I like, and it
Oh yeah, let
so
me see if I can find.
so I decided in honor of their 80th birthday, the 50th year of the birth of that paint job, and I was born in 72. Dad always called it my twin sister, and I painted up my go-kart to look as
Hold
close as I could to a sprint car or his modified.
keep talking.
Oh, okay. So it runs a Predator engine that you buy off the shelf from Home Depot, and you go out and you race against other people on a little bull rink of a dirt track. So, and one of these days I might actually do pretty good. The first night out, I didn't do well. Cart was too low, and I drug my hiney on the track. And since then, I've had problems with cars, things breaking. And this last weekend, I had my gas tank fall off in the middle of the
During
race. So,
in the middle of the race.
in the middle of the race, yeah. There's nothing like going, running second, getting ready to pass the leader, to go down the back stretch to see a big black thing as you're passing it, and realize it's your gas tank. So I pulled the infield and let him keep racing, and duct taped it back on so I could get in the the main pits after the races were over. And
Well, that's what.
which
What now? Yeah, but you got to be the track announcer.
Yeah, so I was done. I was going over to talk to a friend of mine, see what they were doing with their gas tanks to keep them from getting shaken off. And a friend of mine that I've known from Salt Lake, him and his family had moved to Idaho Falls. He'd become the track president up in Idaho Falls, and their announcer was gone on vacation for the weekend, and they didn't have one. So the person that was supposed to show up didn't show up, and he was searching me out in the pit area to come be the track announcer for the night. He had the microphone in his hand, and so it was a thing I'd always wanted to do because I seen Grandma and Grandpa let you do the announcing, and I tried that, but they told me I wasn't ever old enough to do it, and they had other jobs for me to be doing, and so it was something I
Yeah,
always wanted. I thought, yeah, it'd be cool to do it, and never had that opportunity, and was able to have it. And would have been nice if I would have known most of the drivers' names or anything like that, but they did have a computer screen that worked
and
sometimes. So
and when I did it, we had a little 3x5 card file. You just have to go through all those.
yeah, they'd have a computer screen. They'd bring it up on the track standings and on one, as far as the scoring going on, and then they'd slide it over to another screen, and it would give you the starting lineup with like a 3/4 inch tall number and a 1/8 inch tall name with the first name last and the last name first. And are you all right?
I'm just old.
Yeah.
So here's
So
somebody has a question about what percentage of people can't be hypnotized. Well, it's an odd question because basically, if you don't want to be hypnotized, you're not going to be hypnotized. I mean, it's not like a hypnotist has magic powers.
most of it starts at the beginning. Most of it starts before you even get there, if you're even going to be hypnotized. Because we both done shows where during the induction, people that didn't even want to be on stage have gone under.
Yeah.
And at that point it becomes kind of weird whether you want to bring them out and let them keep enjoying the show as somebody in the audience, and sometimes you get egged on by their friends to just entertain them as well by using their friend. And
Yeah.
so, but most of it starts before you even get there, and then of course you do have a little bit of that pre-talk and conditioning, and before you even invite anybody onto stage. And
Yeah.
then
I mean, yeah. There's yeah. So when so hypnosis speak. Here's what it is. You have your pre-talk, and what that is you're basically introducing hypnosis to the audience, and you have to come in with the attitude that most of these people don't know anything about hypnosis, because a lot of them it's their first time, that they don't really understand what's going on. So you explain the whole concept, what's going on, what's taking place, what's going to happen. But that's your pre-talk. And
well,
in that, if you're a good hypnotist, you start using hypnotic language within that pre-talk that people who have been hypnotized before can actually go into hypnosis during that pre-talk if you plan it that way. If you know what you're doing, you can do that. And then you go into the induction where you do sort of like this. Would do a pre-induction where you show the audience what it's like to go into hypnosis. So you do this with the whole audience. You kind of give them little suggestions and things that they can do to go into hypnosis if they want to. And then when you find from that group who wants to come up on stage, then you invite them, and then you go into your actual induction. But if you're good, and this would happen to Michael all the time, is that he would get people who would go under hypnosis before he even started to do the induction. And a lot of that is just because you've prepped them properly and you know what you're doing. So it was fun. Did you see this comment?
No,
Right.
I don't see any comments.
Oh, okay. Our good friend Chris Thomas says, "Hi guys, how you doing?"
Well, he sent me a text. Oh, he posted on. He goes, "Whatever are you going to do this weekend?" And I said, "I'm doing a podcast with Rodney in the morning." And he tells me, "Oh, why don't you say hi?" I said, "I'll be on the podcast tomorrow morning. Why don't you?" So,
Well, there he is. He dropped in. Chris Thomas is an old friend. He basically was part of the family.
well, I met him in fifth grade. We were both in fifth grade. We'd moved to Provo. It's probably the longest that we'd lived in anywhere of all our houses. And so in fifth grade, I met him. He knew that our Uncle Jimmy raced because, everything I had a race car drawn on it.
Yeah,
And he liked racing. And he went to Santana because that was the closest thing that he had to his place. We went to Salt Lake and raced at the old Bonneville Raceway. And at one point was even making trips to Las Vegas, I think.
yeah,
And so he become this nutty kid that kept bothering me about racing. And I'm just thinking, oh, this nutty kid, just leave me alone. And ended up by the time we got into sixth grade, we ended up becoming really good friends. And since then we've been,
yeah. I mean, his
really
whole
good
family.
friends.
Yeah, his
Oh,
whole
yeah,
family just kind of became part of the family.
yeah. Well, we never had friends. We just collected more people to become our family, and
Yeah,
their
that's
family
true.
just.
That's true because we moved around so much. You had to get really good at making friends.
Yeah,
And
and the friends that we did have, or we've become long friends, and
yeah,
but his mom, I'd sleep over their place all the time. When we had the racetrack, she went and worked for grandma in the snack bar.
oh yeah, yeah. I
Um,
remember that.
so and we just collected family, and we never made friends. We just kept collecting family, and it's still that way. I've got my friend Guy and Jay Yuri, that Second Chance Racing. Hey, um, I've known them. They're forever. Their aunt Marilyn Bergner had babysat
Well,
us as kids.
well,
So
their sister married our brother.
yeah, you know,
So we're we really are family
yeah.
to that degree. But
So yeah, when you do hypnosis and they talk about doing the hand thing, they have your hands out doing something. That's part of the pre-induction. They're just
oh
trying
yeah,
to
the
smooth you up.
put your hands together. You do that, or they do you see that? Remember that little trick where it's like, okay, we're gonna put your hands together like this, and then no, fold them over, and everybody's like, ah. But if you're know what you're doing, you switch your hand, and people are like, oh, that's hypnosis. No, it's just a silly trick you play
uh,
on people. Anyway, this little trick, you tell people, okay, put your hands one over the other, and then you go, okay, now, um, be sure you get it just right, and then when no one's really paying attention, you kind of you do this thing, and say, okay, now flip them over, and your hands are this way, and theirs are all screwed up, and they're like, oh, and you go, oh, that's part of hypnosis. No, that's not. That's just a silly trick.
or the bucket of water in one hand. It keeps getting heavier and heavier,
Yeah, you either do
dropping, and
the bucket or the balloon where their hand would go up. That's the one I use most of the time.
I use a bucket and the balloon just because I like to entertain myself. So their hands are getting further apart, and
I will say this: one of the biggest mistakes I ever made doing hypnosis was I told them uh, that I was the most attractive person they'd ever seen, and that this was boys and girls, right? It was a big group. It was like 15 of them. Um, but I told them that I'm the most attractive person you've ever seen. You can't um, keep your hands off me. And I really I underestimated the power of that suggestion, because then when I told, when I brought them out, and they started groping me, like they all mobbed me, and they started grabbing me in places that well, it was very uncomfortable. It was, it was I was like, oh, stop that, don't do that whatever again. Oh
Well,
wow, that was a
I've got two. I've got one that was like during my first show. It was a comedian's family, and his grandpa had got onto stage, and so they were laughing just the fact that watching their grandpa. But the dude was, he's up in his 60s. He was old, and I had him out doing something in the audience and decided that I needed him back on. So I made the wall scratch and sniff. So they had to come scratch the wall, sniff it, and this one kid scratching the wall and he goes, "Oh, it's chocolate." And then this dude wanted to sniff chocolate so bad, he picks up this 180-pound kid underneath his shoulders. So grabs him underneath in his armpit, picks him up about 6 inches off the ground, and then moves him and drops him down, and then starts sniffing the wall. And his family just went ape crap because they said they haven't seen him move that fast and pick anything up that heavy in years. And that was entertaining. And then, of course, working down in Utah County, we do things different, and so there was a lot of at that time, these uh, hypnotists that were getting girls stripping on stage, and so
oh
I
yeah,
decided to
yeah,
play that in reverse, and I had a bunch of clothes, from doing, each week I had my clothes. I just changed at the club, and I started throwing clothes onto the stage and telling them that you're you're a Utah County stripper. And so instead of taking clothes off, you add clothes on. And the more clothes you can get on, the more, money the audience gives you. And so she got completely dressed in about 4 or 5 layers of my clothes. And then I needed to get them back. And I told her, all right, you're going to, start, you take them back to the point that you came on stage with. So I'm giving her a stopping point, but I
yeah.
also said as you feel comfortable. And evidently she felt more comfortable with less clothing on because she was
Oh
starting to take her shirt off. And I had to stop her at that point. But I thought, oh, I got to make sure you definitely have a dead stopping point. That,
yeah,
but
you have to learn to be very specific with your language.
yeah,
You
if
know,
you
and
over, you've got to make sure that it's very specific, and you make sure that
yeah.
it's very clear.
Yeah, I had one night that it was a weird night. I had a good sized crowd. But I didn't get very many volunteers. I think it was because it was a group that there was like two or three large groups that came together who had never been to a hypnosis show. So they didn't really know. And so they were all apprehensive about going under. So when I called for volunteers, I only got like 6 people that came up, and only 2 went under. And then one of them fell out after just a few skits. So I had one person under hypnosis, and they were really in. I mean, they were really under. And so then I told the audience, I said, well, hey, why don't we just flip this? And how about you guys become his, why don't we perform for him? And so we created this whole thing of him going to all these different circumstances, and the audience became part of the show. So they would we had them at one point go. Everybody left and went outside,
Yeah.
because remember we had those big windows in the back, so you could see. So I had everybody go back out there, and then had him uh, basically wake up, and there's nobody around, and he's by himself, and then he's like in the future. And it was just, we just played all these funny skits with, as the audience was basically interacting and stuff, and it was so much fun. But it was just one guy, but we just turned it so that now we were entertaining this one guy who was under hypnosis. It was one of the funnest shows I think I've ever done.
Well, I looked at more of, I was entertaining me. So I want to see what I could do with whatever I can do with what I have at the time. And I wanted to be entertained. And there was a night we did a comedy competition. So I had, comedians there, a lot of their family, and then Andy Gold, you know Andy.
Yes, yes, I know Andy quite well.
At that point, he was a horrible comedian, and people would just stare at him. He was still new at it. He was getting better.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just new. He was just new. Yeah.
He didn't know how to work the crowd correctly, and he was getting better. He was actually come on and was one of my. He wanted to prove me wrong that hypnosis didn't work, and I got him under and entertained myself with him for a while. Gave him the suggestion that he'll be a better comedian every time he gets on stage. And then after the show was over with me, I think I had him quacking like a duck kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I ran into him a year later at another open mic thing somewhere else. And everybody goes, because they all heard that you could walk up and tap somebody on the shoulder and put them back under if you've had them under hypnosis before. And I wanted to actually see if it worked. And so I walked up, tapped him on the shoulder and told him to sleep and dropped him in a lobby of a restaurant. And everybody
Really?
stood around and laughed. Yeah.
Oh, that's
It
fun.
was pretty funny. And they're like, "Oh, that can't be true." I said, "Well, he went down in a puddle of something. I don't think he would purposely, just for entertainment's sake, do that." So,
Yeah. Here we have a question. Who were your most important teachers, inspirations in hypnosis? For me, it was well, I trained under Vincent Lords, but I learned a lot from Tracy Waterland. Learned quite a bit from Tracy. Hypno Hick.
yeah, Sean Christensen.
Sean Christensen. Sean Fetters was helpful.
They were they're all good
Sean is
hypnotists.
really good at the very technical parts of hypnosis. You know what I mean?
Mine goes all the way back to the fairground days. The Sullivan County
Vandermeer.
Fairgrounds.
Vandermeer. That was the guy.
Well, I don't remember his name. I just remember those shows as a little kid walking by and watching this, crazy stuff going on stage.
Vandermeer. Well, that guy, his name was Vandermeer, and he was like the biggest hypnotist in Utah for years. He was the guy. He did all the state fairs, or Vandermeed. It might have been Vandermeed. But anyway, he was actually doing hypnosis shows up until what was it, about 2000. And he had been doing shows at the Jordan Commons, the movie theaters in Sandy. He was doing shows there, and then he retired. And so I came in and I found out that he had been doing shows there. So I went and I talked to them and says, well, if he's not doing shows anymore, well, let me do shows, and I'll bring hypnosis and comedy. And so that's where I started into doing, booking shows was these theaters. And that's where I got to meet a lot of the Coffin too.
Yep.
And that's where I started meeting a lot of the hypnotists. That's where I met Vincent Lords. That's where I met Jerome. Do you remember Jerome?
Yeah. Well, there was some lady hypnotist. She was the worst one I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, she was horrible. She was horrible. She was like a friend of Maxwell's or somebody she trained under Maxwell.
She needed to keep training.
And well, it was funny because she had all of the graphics. Her posters looked great. She had all the promo stuff. So it was like, okay, great. And so we put her on, let her do a weekend, and it was one of the absolute worst shows we've ever.
Oh no, it was the worst. It
was horrible. Horrible.
She brought down, I think there was probably close to 30 people in chairs that she was trying to put under. And I think only 2 or 3 of them actually went under. And she stopped and tells me, because I was running it for you because you're doing all sorts of stuff, and says, if I don't get at least a couple more people down here, I'm going to have to stop this show, and I want to get paid. And I thought, oh, there's no way we're stopping this show because I don't want to reimburse all these people money.
Yeah.
And I've been hypnotized so many times that I'm a flopper. They did just do it. You got to do it. I'm down,
Yeah.
And I went down there and ended up saving the show from getting canceled. And evidently they thought I was funny. So
Oh, dude, you need to do hypnosis again. You need to get back into it, man.
I was looking into it, and at the same time I was looking into it and had people asking about it. That COVID thing popped up and nobody could go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you kind of need a crowd for hypnosis. So, and they got to be willing to be close to each other.
Well, I know there's a couple places in Utah that's doing hypnosis again.
Well,
Get you up there.
maybe I'll look
All right,
into
so
something.
here's a question for you. I think people want to know what was it like having me as your brother
Oh,
growing up? I don't think we've ever had this conversation.
I don't think we ever have. Actually, I've got fantastic brothers. I've really, I've seen a lot of these families. There's always kind of the clique group and the anti-cliques, and one that kind of can mingle between all of them. And we don't have that. I could call up and talk to any of my brothers and ask her advice, over the years, money, whatever I've needed, and I've always got the help. But you've been a fantastic brother. I remember growing up, and you had the luxury of sleeping in the same room as me. The, the guy that had problems growing up with my bladder didn't quite seal itself off at night, and
Yeah.
our room smelled like pee, and I got to sleep on plastic sheets and everything else. So, you got the joy of living with me, and I remember, how old we were. I got sick one night. I threw up in the middle of my sleep, and you cleaned up the mess, and I thought, so I don't know. You've been a fantastic brother. I remember driving the first time we borrowed Dad's company work truck to had the
Oh yeah, Ford F-150.
driving it to Springville, and we were both trying to figure out how to work a clutch and gears at the same time, and that was quite entertaining.
Yes.
We
Yes.
we did a lot of things growing up as kids. You're the first one to own anything I raced. You're my first
Yeah.
go-kart owner. When you had the
Well,
paper
yeah,
route,
I had a job, and so I had money. So we okay. Let me put her out.
so Rodney had a paper route, and he was the only one of us actually did that. The rest of us kind of didn't care. So he was the ambitious one who always wanted to make money. But we built go-karts that we had a hill that was down the street from our grandparents that was in the shape of an S. And so we would start at the top of the hill and just let each other go and drive the go-karts down. And we used to borrow neighbor kids' big wheels. And then they no longer had big wheels because we decided to keep the wheels off them. They made really good downhill go-kart tires. And so Rodney and Tracy and Steven, the older three, they were the ones that actually were able to use the carpentry tools. I think more Steven and Tracy, and decided to build a go-kart that looked like a sprint car. And they got it all built, looked really fancy. And they didn't bother checking to see if any of them could fit inside it. And by the time they got to that point, it actually had the roll cage built on top, and they couldn't even fit inside the go-kart. So I was the only one that could fit in the go-kart. So that would become mine.
Yep.
Steven built the one that you lay flat and you use your arms to steer with.
Yeah.
That one was that was scary to watch him go down the hill in.
Yeah. That was building those go-karts though. That was fun.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, we would just roll. If we could do soapbox derby, if there was any kind of soapbox derby racing in Utah, we would have done it. But there wasn't that we could find, so we just built our own carts and raced them ourselves and just had fun. Because yeah, we had a lot of hills in the area. My favorite one was the one across the street that went up to the power plant.
Yeah, they stopped
But
us on that one pretty quickly, though.
yeah, because it would come down and it would feed into the main highway.
Yeah.
And what we would do is it was paved, so it was really nice, smooth, fast. But you would have to either stop before you got to the road, or we would have lookouts, and we'd be looking, put people looking both ways. And if there were no cars coming, you go down the thing and then hurry, get across the freeway, 4 lanes, and onto a dirt road on the other side. And
We'd also take if we were done for the end of the day, you would wait for the traffic to clear, and then you would drive down the hill and then turn and go towards grandma's, and that meant we didn't have to push them as far.
yeah, because yeah, grandma's house was just like it's across the street. That area now is so, I mean, it's almost unrecognizable.
No, it's sad to drive by there now.
Built up.
We had that house that had the field in the backyard that would freeze over, and we'd gotten, ice skate as kids, and
yeah, ice skate in that horse field.
yeah,
That was fun.
I always loved going to grandma's.
Somebody asked if our carts were fast.
Fast enough.
Fast enough. They said we weren't racing. We were just doing it to do it ourselves. So we didn't really. We don't know how fast they went. To be honest with you, we were just building them for the fun of it. So
they had to have been doing at least 20, maybe 25, which is pretty good for it wasn't that long of a hill. We wasn't going so fast that Dad was scared to let us do it, because he would go over and use a Suburban to drive us back up to the top of the hill.
mm-hmm.
I think Dad was just happy to watch us do stuff with our hands and not be.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was the thing. We were encouraged to build and do stuff all the time when we were kids. Remember, Dad? We had that dryer that kept breaking a belt.
Oh, no, it wasn't belts. It was the coils in the back that would heat up, and the coils would break. And so he showed us how to take the back off, take the coil strip out, and then we would keep splicing in nuts from where the coils would break. And I got pretty good at it.
Well, that and the belt, because I remember having to fix the belt on the dryer several times myself.
I remember the coils.
Coils. Well, it was just everything that broke. You never thought to go buy a new one. You just figured out how to fix that one.
Well, Dad would let us have it our try of trying to fix it first. Because if we could fix it, we could keep using it. But if it was broken, it was going to get replaced anyhow. So we was never discouraged not to mess with something that was broke.
Yeah, start to figure it out. Remember, Dad always said, if you know how it works, you can figure out how to fix it.
Well, yeah, and Dad was not my favorite guy for probably a good year. when I was trying to build my first street stock. And it was in the house, it was in the garage,
Yeah.
and I'd brought the car home. I'm all excited. I'm thinking, Dad's gonna come running out. We're gonna tear this thing down and start building, and it's gonna be great and wonderful. And they never come out. And I stripped it down by myself and started collecting all the parts that I needed. Asked him if he was going to come help me on the car, and he says nope. And he'd get in the Suburban and he'd drive over to Tracy's house and work on his race car.
Well,
At one point, I asked him, I said, "What do I have to do? Do I have to paint 26 on the side of the car to get you to come help me?" And he tells me, "No, that won't work either." But I could ask him anything, and he would explain it to me. And sometimes he might even draw it down, for me. But it was mostly, "This is what you're going to do," or he'd ask, "Well, what do you think you should do?" And I would tell him, "Well, go try it." It's like, oh. And I built that car by myself, and I was pissed off and frustrated. I hated that car. And you get to the racetrack and thinking, boy, he's finally going to help. And it was, well, what do you think it's going to do? I don't know. Well, why don't you try it? We'll find out. He knew exactly what was going to happen. I think if we did something stupid that was unsafe, he would have stopped me at that point. But, up until that point, I don't think he was going to help me. I couldn't understand why. It pissed me off. I sold that car as soon as I was done with it that first year. I hated the car. I hated everything about it.
Uh-huh.
And then it didn't even dawn on me. I continued to build things I raced. I actually drove that car again, and destroyed it. But I continued racing, and I was getting a little more help from Dad, but never a lot. The guys next to us got plenty of help. He'd wrench on their cars. He'd explain to them what they needed to do. And then I was explained by Stephen at one point that Dad would rather watch you win learning on your own and what make them better at making you faster. So he would keep teaching everybody else around you and showing them, because they didn't need to learn. He could just tell them what they wanted, and they liked him. So he was their favorite. But we were having to learn on our own, and, through asking. But we had to learn, and you got to figure it out and decide what worked and what didn't. And we got better, we got faster, and got more competitive. But he was also making everybody around you more competitive at the same time. But it didn't dawn on me why he taught us that way, because Tracy told me, his first cars were the same way. Stephen had the same problem with him, that he'd go work on Uncle Jimmy's car instead. And it didn't dawn on me until after he had passed away, and Danny Uri had already committed to reclipping a modified. And we're all standing in Guy's garage going, well, what do we do? And I thought, I know exactly. And I, figured out the geometry of the front clip where it needed to be and started welding bars in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I built my ambulance after that. And I think, I'm glad he taught me the way he did, rather than to go show me or do it for me, because at that point I would have, if it all been given to me, I'd be paying other people to be doing things for me. So
yeah, he was like that. I remember I had that Subaru.
I don't remember Subarus. I don't remember ever owning.
Okay, it was one of the cars you hit.
No, I don't remember anything of those. I don't remember.
Anyway, so I had this little blue Subaru wagon, and I think it was the CV axle went bad on the front, and it wasn't running. And Dad, I had the money for the part, so he got the part, and I remember I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna fix it for me. He brings the part home and he says, "Well, here you go." And I go, "Well, when are you going to fix it?" He goes, "I'm not going to fix it." Like, I thought you were going to go fix it. Because no, it's your car. You figure it out. Like, and this is back before YouTube. This is, I mean, this was like, okay.
This would you gotta go buy the manual from the store.
Yeah, I'd go buy the Haynes manual. But so I got the manual and had to just kind of figure it out. And he said, if you got questions, come and ask, but, figure it out yourself. And so I took it all apart and put it back together, and it worked. And I'll never forget that feeling of driving it after I repaired it. Just that great feeling of, hey, I did this myself. I can do this. And then after that, I mean, I had helped around the shop and stuff. I'd done different things. I knew how to do brakes and basic mechanic stuff. I'd paid attention enough that I knew a lot of that stuff, but to actually, start tearing things apart and putting it back together, that was the first time. And he's just like, oh, yeah, figure it out. and and that was the thing. If anything, he taught me was that none of this is all that complicated when you just understand how everything works. And just kind of look, you just kind of look at it, and you can kind of figure it out. And that was it. And from there on, I was kind of surprised everybody, especially Tressa, because when Tressa came into the family, I was the only one. I wanted to build a car. I don't know if you remember the Ford Falcon that was in the backyard for a long time.
Yeah.
I was trying to turn that into a race car. And I got it stripped down. I was going to start actually building it, and I just didn't have the money and ended up not doing anything with it. But anyway, when Tressa came into the family, everybody told her, "Oh, Rodney doesn't know anything about cars," right? And so we get married and we moved to North Carolina. And when I'm in North Carolina, there's this guy in my unit who had taken his car out because he was having his brakes were grinding, right? And so he took the car out to Sears, I think it was, and they were telling him, "Oh, you can't drive this car; it's dangerous. You got to have the brakes changed, and all four tires, brakes need to be changed. The rotors need to be changed. The calipers needs to be changed." They quoted him like $1,500. This
Oh,
is back in '90. This, I mean, like,
yeah.
and he's just freaking out because he's scared because he's like, it's his only car, and he didn't know anything what to do. Um, and so I got talking to him about it, and I was like, "Was your car here?" Right? He goes, "Yeah." And so I said, "Well, let me take it for a spin." Right? So I get in his car and drive it around, and it wasn't grinding; it was just at the indicator thing. So it was like had a scratching noise. Like, so the pads weren't even. It wasn't grinding on the metal. It was just the indicator was just letting you know, hey, the pads are going down, right? So I told him, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I can fix your brakes for $15." He's like, "What?" I go, "Yeah, $15. That's about the cost for pads, and bring me a 6-pack of Mountain Dew, and I'll do it for you." So he's like, "Okay." So after work, he goes off to the auto parts store, grabs the pads, comes back to the house, and pulls into my driveway, and I jack the car up and start working on it. Tressa comes home, and she sees me working on this guy's car. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm just fixed his brakes." And she goes, "You know how to do brakes?" I go, "Well, yeah." She goes, "I thought you didn't know anything about cars." And I said, "Oh, compared to my 3 race car building brothers, no, but no, I know how to fix a car." It freaked her out. It kind of blew her mind that I, changed out the guy's brakes pretty easily, pretty quickly. The guy was tickled, and
Um, yeah. It's amazing that, people don't know nothing how to fix anything anymore. It's just toss it in the trash and go buy a new one. And
yeah, fix stuff. That's why I'm doing the Nissan Titan that you're very familiar with.
oh,
385,000 miles on this thing.
Have you changed out the steering column yet?
No, not yet.
Are you
Thankfully,
going to?
eventually.
You
Well, right
need to.
now it stalled. It died on us that the fuel pump's gone out.
Oh, well,
So and you got to drop the tank to get to it.
oh,
And
well,
we had just filled up, so
oh,
the tank is completely full.
they never go bad when it's empty. They always go
Fortunately.
after you fill a tank.
But so now, so I got to drop the tank, and I just I've been putting it off for a week, and I really need to just go out and do it. So that's what I'm doing. When from here, I'm going to go drop the tank and change out the fuel filter in my truck. I love that truck. That thing is just going forever.
Well, I would do go buy a one of those cheap electric fuel pumps and some rubber hose, one note to go into the tank and one to come out of the tank. Fill
Well,
your
I
other cars with it and get rid of as much gas as you can out of it,
well
or even put it in the 5 gallon cans.
I tried the hose. The Nissan has got something in there that it won't allow a hose to go down in there because I've
Oh,
tried and I've looked and they say yeah they do this weird configuration inside there so that so you can't stick anything down in there to siphon anything out,
well,
which is good to know.
yeah, but people that
Um,
are really wanting your gas don't care about that anymore. They just drill a hole in the bottom of the tank
yeah, that's
and take
true.
it out from there. So,
That's true. But I've got a um but anyway, so when I disconnect the filler tube, then I can get into there. And but yeah, I've got a thing, and I'm gonna take all the fuel out.
yeah.
But yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, I love that truck. That thing. So it's over how many miles now?
385,000.
Oh,
The last time I took it into a Nissan dealership to get it serviced, every mechanic got a picture with it because they'd never seen a Nissan Titan, that old first generation Titan, go that far.
it was a fun truck to drive. I miss that thing.
Yeah, it's just great. I mean, to replace it, it cost me, that, and I don't use a truck that much. I mean, it's just run stuff to the dump and go pick things up from the that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's made how many trips across the country though? And then
Oh, it's done it, and I got to do it again now. I think I might end up having to go back to Utah and pick up some stuff um next month. So
really?
yeah, so I might
Uh,
be driving it back out there again.
Well, I would take that over any Jeep because a Jeep you need a Jeep driver recovery
Oh,
vehicle.
the Jeep is that thing is so frustrating.
Get rid of it.
Uh,
You can never fix a Jeep to stop it breaking down.
oh, I know. What is
They
it?
just
Jeep stands for just empty every pocket.
yeah,
Because yeah, that thing has been, and my good friend Brian has helped me with so much fixing so much of it. But it's like as soon as you get one thing fixed, something else goes out. So now it's the reverse. The reverse doesn't work.
and a standard's automatic.
It's automatic.
But I would get rid of it. Drive it to the wrecking yard while you still can.
I've had the okay. Somebody's asking what is the Jeep? It's a Jeep Grand Cherokee, a 2003 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Hey, there's Kyle. You know Kyle. It's our nephew Kyle. Hello, Kyle.
Oh, Kyle.
He says, "True, I just bought a '98 Jeep, and I'm going through that now." Yep.
Yeah, there's never a
Kyle
good
Kyle
Jeep.
Todd is our nephew, our youngest daughter, our youngest sister's
Youngest son.
Kathy's youngest son, Kyle. He's in the army. Very proud of this young man. He's a good he's
Congratulations on the new baby.
Yes, he's got 2 kids. Really cool wife. She's awesome. He married well. He's a good dude, man. Good dude. And but yeah, he likes Jeeps. He was always that thing I liked about Kyle was he always had that. I saw a lot of his grandpa, our dad in Kyle and his attitude because he wants to fix everything. If something's broke, he wants to fix it. And well, I had to calm him down a couple times because he would he would try to fix that. Like, okay, hold your horses, well, you know. But no, he lived with me for a little while. He was awesome to have around because he fixed everything. I mean, anytime I had a problem with the cars, you know, I think I at one time I remember mentioning or Tressa mentioned that one of the cars the brakes were grinding, you know, and so I stopped and I picked up the parts the night before, and I brought them home. And the next morning I was going to go and fix the car, and he had it up and running before I even got out there. He just put it together. He's, oh, I got to take care of it. He would do that kind of stuff. He was awesome. Good dude, man.
Yep. Great kid.
Proud of that young man.
Yep. Thank you for his service also.
What's that?
Thank you for his service.
Yes. Yes. His father, I'll tell you this, his father was a pretty cool dude.
What?
And
Did I tell you the story when I first met him? He come to our house to pick up Kathy, our youngest
uh-huh.
sister, for a date. And Kathy, you know, God bless her soul, she is not good at picking guys. She'll walk by the really good guy to go find the guy at the end of the aisle that's really not the great guy, and
and
that becomes the boyfriend. And
and
here
what
comes
was
this.
and she was a good looking gal too. I
Oh,
mean,
she's
there was no
beautiful young
reason
lady.
she got some real good looking dudes that liked her.
Yeah,
But she would go,
so we're living down in San Antonio, and all of a sudden, this guy in this beater Mustang comes pulling up, parks in front of the house, gets out, he's got his cowboy hat on, which we love the guy. I love your dad, you know, but we called him the Nell because he wore a cowboy hat, and he is skinny. He is,
oh, he was
he
just
can hide behind a fence pole and you couldn't find him skinny.
oh, he was just a tall, lanky dude,
Oh
man.
yeah, and he's got this cowboy hat, and it is a flat brim hat. You look like a Nell. And he comes
Yeah,
walking up,
man.
and me and Dad's working on the Suburban. Dad had just asked me to mow the lawn, the weed patch thing they have in Texas.
Yeah.
And he comes up and, talks to us for a second and asks if there's anything that he could do for us. And I turned and looked at him, joking around because it's me. I said, well, you could mow the lawn. And he turns around and grabs the lawnmower and starts mowing it just before he's getting ready to go on a date with Kathy. And I'm thinking, oh man, I really like this guy, but man, you didn't have to mow the lawn. And so I ended up stopping him. No, I was just joking. It's all right, And I went in and got Kathy, and he was standing there talking to Dad about this Mustang, and he wasn't going by the miles of gallons of gas. He was going by the quarts of oil he was putting in the engine. And we went out and realized that he had overfilled his engine because he just kept adding oil because there was oil on the ground. So if there's oil on the ground, there's got to be oil coming out of the engine. So rather than checking with the dipstick of actual how much oil was in there, he just kept adding another quart of oil every couple of days.
Oh wow.
And so the dipstick was probably a good 3 or 4 inches high of oil. I'm surprised the motor ran, but that was my first impression of him. And then I got to know him, the great guy, love him to death, and he did anything for Kathy and those kids. And
Oh, he was a good man. But he joined the army to basically take care of his family.
yeah,
And although things didn't work out necessarily with my sister and him, There was some animosity and some bad blood there for a bit. But I think they came to peace with each other. But he ended up getting killed in Afghanistan. He was a tank commander, and he was taken out by a sniper. Um, I'll let you know there was a sad state of affairs in that with that his side of the family was that he was killed, I think, in August, but we did not. In fact, Kathy and the rest of us did not learn about it until the end of the school year, until June of the following year. Because and the reason that we found out about it was because one of her daughters was graduating from high school and wanted her to attend, and so informed her at that time that David had been killed overseas. And the reason the other family, his family, kept it from us was they were worried that Kathy, because she had been married to him for so many years and was the mother of all the children, that she technically was supposed to have gotten part of the uh, insurance money from him dying. And but they kept it from her so she wouldn't know about it, and they ended up basically blowing all the money, which was supposed to go to the kids. um his new wife or whatever, she ended up buying motorcycles for her boyfriend or something, and so all the money just was gone that was supposed to go to take care of these kids, went to her. And they kept it from Kathy just to keep, basically so she wouldn't be involved. And it was a horrible mess. It was a horrible, horrible mess, and very unfortunate. But we and the kids were kind of kept away from us for a long time. But eventually, we've been able to reestablish connections with them. And said Kyle came to live with us for a while. Candace has been here. Um, it's just, family drama is the worst drama. it was that was a long sorted. Ugh, that was gut wrenching.
I think I heard about it after Dale Jr. had they'd actually, because at NASCAR they'll, I think, Memorial weekends and stuff like that, they'll put a fallen soldier's name on, and I
Yeah.
think it was Dale Jr. that had his name on his car.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was kind of weird to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. But the I mean the disastrous thing about the whole thing was they kept it from us, so we didn't even get to be a part of the funeral. Saying goodbye. I mean, we never were given that opportunity. And here, I really cared for this guy. I got to know him, and even though him and Kathy, ended up divorcing and having their weird thing, I never disliked him.
No,
I always
I
saw
always
he
have.
was doing what he thought was best, and I understood that. And that was just it was just bad.
When they first got married and then just had Candace, they were living with us, and he was going to school to become a mechanic. He was got a job working at McDonald's, and then ended up becoming like maintenance or something for them. But the dude was working in McDonald's after high school to make sure that he had money to,
Oh yeah,
take.
he was not he didn't want handouts. He didn't want I mean, he was there to take care of his family, and he did whatever it took to take care of them. And totally just proud of that dude. He just stepped up, and then yeah, I mean, he joined the army because that was the best option for him at the time.
And he scored high enough on his ASVAB test and everything else that he could have gone into the medical field. But he wanted to be in the tanks. He wanted to be part of that, and he fought to be there. That's why I just didn't.
Yeah. Oh, so people. Okay, so you understand this happened many years ago. The kids are all grown up and they have their own families. Like Kyle is the youngest. But the kids have all grown up. They've moved on, and they're all doing really well. So you don't need to start a GoFundMe or anything.
Oh no,
Somebody's
yeah,
talking
no,
about
they're
somebody's asking if they can donate to the family. So you don't.
well, no.
That's not
You,
necessary. It's they're
if
they're doing great. They're fine.
if you want to start a
Help them on.
GoFundMe, I could use some money for racing. So
Yeah, if you want to sponsor Michael's race car, you can do that. Um, if you feel like throwing money at something, you can throw money at Michael's race car.
because I race with Guy Uri and Jay Uri, and there's his guy's stepdaughter Carly Shroud and Ryan. Can't think of his last name, but it's a second chance racing. So Guy, my friend, and I grew up with him from the time we were knee high to a tadpole. Fell into alcohol and had a hard time with alcohol. Well, he had a real good time with alcohol. It just didn't affect him well, and he drank way too much of it. Got a
Yeah,
lot of DUIs, spent some time in jail from it. And at one point, he decided to clean himself up, got clean, straightened up his life, fell back into, I can manage alcohol again, and realized that he couldn't. And he's been clean for good 10 years or so, or maybe six, somewhere there. The guy's, he's a hero. The guy was a stumbling drunk. Now he's got a great family, you know,
great business. He's
yeah,
doing
great
really
business.
well.
And he's decided to make up his old racing team and calls it the Second Chance Racing. And so his younger brother Jay, he was strung out on all sorts of stuff and spent some time in jail and straightened himself up. He's got remarried. His wife's had a stroke in the past few years, and still works a full-time job and taking care of her and everything else. That you know the two of these kids that at one point you just kind of you didn't know if they were going to make it that long, and both of them have turned out
Oh,
fantastic. And
yeah, I was worried about Jay for a long time.
oh yeah,
Really
well,
worried. But he pulled himself together, man. I
yeah.
give that dude all kinds of credit and guy.
So they've started the Second Chance Racing. It's they help out people that are you know trying to dig themselves out of holes that they put themselves into because you know alcohol and drugs isn't a hole that's opened by somebody else. It's your own hole that you've dug. And so I don't have any of those dark demons to be second chancing from.
Yeah, well, it's like
But
I tell people I never had and I credit Grandpa McPhee for this, but I never had any desire whatsoever for alcohol, and I'm so grateful. And it's just I remember Grandpa when he wasn't drunk, he was really funny and fun to hang out with, but he would get too drunk, and then he got violent and mean, and then we had to leave. And so I always, as a kid, I always associated that smell of alcohol with, basically taking my grandpa away. And I hated all of it. And I just never cared for alcohol at all because of that.
I tried it for a while, and
Hmm.
then
But it doesn't
one
take
day
long.
I was lighting fireworks that didn't have much of a fuse left on them. Luckily, they didn't blow up on me. But a friend of mine, the morning after, because we always had a deal: you drink there, you stay there. Woke up the next morning, and she told me how embarrassed she was of me. And I thought, oh, and I quit drinking and haven't had one in I don't know how many years, probably 20 something years. You got a bug in your microphone or what?
Hold on. I'm trying to. Somebody's asking for Cash App. Do you have a Cash App?
Who?
You.
Me? I have a Venmo. I think it's under Michael Norman Help at Yahoo. Is somebody actually going to give money?
Yeah, somebody's
Oh,
offering to give money for your for your race car.
great. I was just joking, but somebody wants to pony up some money, I'm good
Yeah.
for it.
And Mike Smith also there's Mike. If you guys want to help somebody out, there's Mike Smith. This isn't my brother, but he needs money for gas to get to work.
Oh, well, send
And
him
he's,
money.
and he's out of cigarettes.
Oh, well,
So he needs gas and cigarettes. So there, if you're interested, you can help out Mike Smith.
I need lunch in a couple hours, so
Me too. Yeah, it's getting close. I gotta make me some lunch and then go. I gotta switch my glasses out here. I'm at that point, depending on what I'm trying to look at, I have to change glasses. I'm getting old. Well,
oh,
this has been
oh,
fun. What?
I figured out how to do the chat thing.
Oh, so you can see what they're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, Connie Daniels no longer drinks. Good job, Connie.
Oh, so it's a somebody asked what kind of race car it is. It's a go-kart. It's a fart cart. It's a stock box engine go-kart.
Yeah.
It
Now,
looks like a sprint car.
are you racing mostly against kids though? Is that kind of weird?
No, the fart carts are an adult. It's a 15 and older. You got to weigh like 450 pounds.
Total, not just the driver.
Well, at least minimum weight with the driver in it has to weigh 450.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure
So
many of them.
So if you make up that weight yourself,
Yeah, then you're good.
okay.
But
Oh, he dropped off. I don't know what happened to him. But anyway, that's my brother Michael. I don't know what happened. He just dropped off. I don't know what happened. But anyway, you can find him. He's on Facebook. I said he's my brother Michael Norman. I'll set up his link. If you want to follow his race car, you want to support him, what he's doing, that's awesome. You guys have been awesome. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today. I'm going to be doing more of these every Saturday morning. Basically, I'm going to be interviewing somebody. No pressure. If you want to join me, if you want to be on one of these, if you want to hang out, conversation, talk about you, talk about life, talk about philosophy, your history, whatever you want to talk about, just as long as you don't get political. Because you can go anywhere and talk about politics. I don't want to do it here. But if you're interested, send me a message. Thank you, everybody who's been here. You guys are amazing. You have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And now I'm going to go change out the fuel filter, fuel pump on my 2006 Nissan Titan that I've been putting off for way too long. Okay. Okay, bye.